Hey guys, welcome back to Freestyle Unlimited. We've got a really fun video. I just picked something up. It's going to be a little bit of a channel project. We're going to go over some basics, maintenance, and just kind of general jet ski stuff for the people out there that have not had a chance to work on jet skis or are looking to get into it, but don't want to go into it completely blind. So today we are going to be looking at this JS550 motor. I just picked this up on Facebook Marketplace for $60. And we're gonna compression test it, and we'll probably rebuild the whole thing, and I don't know, we'll put it in something maybe. We'll see. So I'm gonna make this video. It's gonna be a how-to video on compression testing for a jet ski, kind of what to look for when you're compression testing, the numbers, and kind of how to go about it. But super easy. It'll be a quick video. So let's get into it. We are going to start off with, we've got our general tools. We've got a spark plug socket on a ratchet. We've got a compression tester kit. You can pick these up at Harbor Freight. They're about $60. I'll drop a link in the bio to the Harbor Freight website with this item. And then because I don't have this in a ski right now, obviously, I'm going to have to fire it off with something. So we are going to have a battery, and I've got a small piece of wire there to hook up to the battery terminal on the starter to crank it over, and we'll just ground this side out on the motor. So let's get this set up. I'll show you how all of this works, and we'll compression test the motor. Alrighty, so let's just go over our basic setup here. To compression test, we're going to open our kit. You're going to have a bunch of different pieces, which are going to be different threads for different cars, different power sports, you know, vehicles and whatnot. Most of the time you'll use this one. At least for all of the stuff that I do, I use this one or this metal one. And we are going to remove the spark plugs. We're going to put the tube in there. We're going to hook up our gauge to it, and we're going to crank it over. And it's going to tell us how much compression we're building. So I've got this rigged up. We've got the battery grounded to the flywheel cover, and we've got our positive lead here off the positive part of the battery that we will touch to the starter here, and it should crank over. So it cranks over. That's great. So let's get these spark plugs pulled, and we will compression test the first cylinder. When you are compression testing, you want to pull both of these out so the motor can spin over and you can get good compression numbers, so that your starter is not fighting the other cylinder while trying to give you a reading on the cylinder that you're testing. So I'm going to pull the plugs out. We are going to throw this on, and I will show you exactly how all this works. So we've broken these both loose. We're going to back both of the spark plugs out. Just like this. What plugs are these? These are some BR80S. This is what I run in all of my skis. These are good plugs. I mean, these in general are what you should be running. Everything looks nice and brown. Actually, it looks like it was well tuned, so that's good. That's a good sign. There's no corrosion on it, which means there's probably not moisture in the cylinders, so that's a great sign. The motor spins over freely, which is very important to test because you can't test it if you can't crank it over, especially not at speed. So we're going to screw our line in here. We've got a quick attach fitting here. We're going to pull our gauge out, and we will hook our gauge onto the quick attach, and we'll just keep we'll throw our gauge up here, and we'll crank it over. So, ooh, that was getting toasty. We'll go again, try and get we'll go until the gauge stops. Alright, so it stopped there. We are looking at, what is that? Just about 125, 130 PSI. It's not great, but we can go over kind of generic numbers once we get a feel for what we got going on here. So we're looking for about even on the second cylinder. That's one thing you want to look for when you're doing these tests, is you need to make sure that you're within, usually a good rule of thumb is 10% of the other cylinder. but you also want to make sure that you've got a decent compression number. It doesn't matter if you've got 10% variation and you're at 60 psi of compression. These things operate, I think brand new, they're about 150 psi. So 125 for a motor that's been out of a ski for a few years and just sitting dry is pretty decent. Now that we're swapped over to the other cylinder, we're going to test it out. You want to look for some numbers similar to what we got in the first one, which was 125. So we'll get our gauge here. We'll crank it over. And we are right around that same point there. So that's awesome. We've got equal compression across the two cylinders. I'm actually going to just throw a little bit of fuel in the cylinder and retest it and see what we get. So we get a little lubrication. Maybe the rings will seal up a little bit better, and we'll see if we can bump this compression up. I'd like to see closer to 150, but we'll take what we can get at this point. At least we've got compression. This is plenty to actually run the ski. So we don't have an ignition system on here, but I'm just going to take some, this is some pre-mixed fuel. I'm just going to dump a little bit in the cylinder, give it a little squirt, get that one, give it a little squirt. And then I'm going to turn this thing over by hand, try and kind of spread that fuel out around the cylinders. See if we can't get things lubricated. This thing spins very smooth. I like that a lot. I'm feeling pretty good about this next test here. Hoping to see something closer to about 150 psi. Got a little bit of clicking there. Not sure what that is. But spins over a lot more freely. Still at about 125. Doesn't really surprise me, but we'll test this back cylinder. We've got the back cylinder hooked up. We've got our gauge here. We're going to run it up and see what we can get. Alright, we are sitting right at that 120, 125 range still. So we're probably going to not be able to bump that compression up too much. I'm not too worried about it. It is making a little bit of clicking noise while it's cranking over, which that's a little bit concerning, but we'll figure that out. It could be starter related. There could be something rattling around. I'm not sure. But that is how you do a compression test on these skis. Pretty much any ski in general, it's going to be pretty similar. In general, if you've got like a stock motor, stock ski, 150 psi is usually pretty good. Once you start getting into like high compression heads, like ADA heads or like aftermarket heads with aftermarket domes, you'll be looking at different compressions, and that's all going to be dependent on what domes you've got in there, and it'll change, but it'll be higher than 150. So 150 is a good rule of thumb to shoot for. If you're getting into something cheap, like this was $60. I mean, honestly, it's worth it just in parts. So I wasn't too worried about it. I was going to buy it anyways. But if you're on the cheap end, like if you know you're going to rebuild it like in the winter or something, you know, you don't have to worry too much about crazy compression. It's good to have some compression, but if you plan to bore it and everything, you don't have to worry as much. But I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, $60 motor, 125 psi compression. I'm sure if I hooked it up to an ignition system, this thing would run. So I can't really ask for a better result than that. But that is how you compression test a ski, kind of what to look for, how to go about it. Super easy. Definitely do it if you're ever looking at buying a ski. Compression test it. I mean, it's gonna save you a ton of headache and time trying to diagnose. If the ski doesn't have compression, it's not gonna run right. So definitely do it. Check it before you buy the ski. If they won't let you compression test it, it's probably got problems. So just be aware of that. But that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and I'm trying to put out content twice a week. So we'll have videos like this. We'll have videos about freestyle. We'll have videos about racing. We'll have a little bit of everything. But subscribe, turn on your notifications, follow the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.